Erol Morkoc, who is American political strategist and spokesman for Republicans overseas. Erol, hello and welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Hi, good to hear from you, although I can just about hear you. I hope that's better. Listen, amazing things that are going on. So Biden's got a week, allegedly, to decide whether he's going to remain the candidate or not. It's not really in anyone's gift to force him to step down, though, is it?
No, it's in nobody's interest to force him to step down because the majority of people are counting on his election for their job to continue. In the United States, we have half political appointees and we have half lifetime workers in government bureaucracy. And frankly, the people who run a zombie candidate like Joe Biden, if they were to run a different candidate, they would actually lose their jobs. So you have a lot of people who have their own livelihood tied up in keeping this sort of not with it completely gentlemen in office. So it's not helping Joe Biden. It's not helping the Democrat Party.
But Errol, the reports are, and I take them as read, that senior Democrats are now saying, look, Joe, the game's up. You're not fit to stand for the next president. And it's Democrats urging him to effectively step down and giving him a week to decide. But they can't actually force him, can they? Is there anything in the American setup, apart from removing a president rather than a candidate, that would allow them to get rid of him?
In the Republican Party, the answer is no. In the Democrat Party, the answer is yes. If you remember, Mr. Bernie Sanders really would have probably been the popular electoral candidate of the Democrat Party in 2016. And inside of their primary system, they can basically go behind closed doors and appoint somebody else. In the Republican Party, you can't do that. That's why Donald Trump was able to take over the Republican Party. If you win in the Republican Party, you win the primary, you win. In the Democrat Party, you actually can change people out. The thing is, Joe Biden is the president. He's the incumbent president, and he can point to data that shows the incumbent always does poorly in the first election, and also the fact that he probably hasn't been off a teleprompter since the first debate 4 years ago. He has a lot of support from the former Obama White House and a lot of those people who are working there. So yes, senior Democrats want to get rid of him. Senior Democrats probably knew that beforehand, but I think it's too little too late. They won't be able to remove him. And he has also personal vested interest. He has his family under investigation. He needs to be able to pardon them. And the only way he can do that is to stay in the race. So the idea that Joe Biden's going to quit, I don't think so.
But it actually suits the Republicans. I kind of, there's part of me thinking, Errol, that you would say this, wouldn't you? Because you want that president to be running again in the election, because you'll cream the election now. That debate's had cut through. People know this guy's out of control, and he's not in, or rather he's not in control of his senses, the poor chap. You know that this is a depressing sight for many Americans to see. You don't want him to go, do you?
Well, you might have my number there a little bit. However, I will say that I felt the same way in 2020. You know, the one thing Joe Biden has been able to achieve over his 50 or 60 years in government is to be underestimated. To be the dumbest man in the room and continue to succeed is not something to scoff at when it's decades and decades later. So yes, he did poorly in the debate, but debates don't decide elections. Will this probably influence some moderate people or sensible people who are on the fence? Yes, but is it gonna reject is his base gonna abandon him? No. So they still are within, you know, a stone's throw of winning this election. It's just a mere couple of points, and they have another debate coming up and plenty of time to run their spin machine.
Another debate? Do you think they'll even let President Biden do that debate?
He has to. He's already committed to it verbally. There's no way he can't. He can't do any worse than the first time. And here's the thing. They kind of neutered Donald Trump by putting this sort of format where he had to red light, green light, couldn't speak out of turn. That actually worked to Donald Trump's favor. It protected Joe Biden from, you know, having to think on his feet. But Donald Trump ended up coming across more presidential. So now the Democrat Party is in a rock and a hard place, but they can't back down from the next debate. They can't switch him out that quickly or it'll show weakness in the party. And frankly, he's, you know, as good as it gets for the people controlling him. If somebody else was to come in, the handlers would lose their candidate. So there's two parties inside the Democrat Party. One of them is the party of Joe Biden, and one of them is the voter. And the voter doesn't want Joe Biden, but Joe Biden is like a zombie. You can't defeat this guy with normal tools. And right now he's going to be their presumptive nominee, I believe.
Do you think there's contingency plans afoot in the Trump camp, though? They talk about this guy, Gavin Newsom, in California, which personally I'm not sure he's the answer to the Democrats' problems. But the Democrats are clearly, some of them, trying to plan for a change. Contingency planning underway, do you think, in Camp Donald Trump?
Yes, I think the Trump campaign has always been ready for another challenger, whether it's Gavin or it's Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, or even, I mean, it's a long shot, but RFK Jr. has, he's ready to step in the wings. They just don't want him. I think perhaps if Biden had a medical emergency or had to withdraw, that's more likely. But right now, Gavin Newsom is a patient, kind of snake kind of figure, and he's waiting in the grass and he's waiting for his turn, and he's been patient long enough. He can be patient for 4 more years. There's contingency plans, but I think they're expecting Joe Biden.
Renee is here with me, Dr. Renee Honderkamp. She's got a theory that it'll be Michelle Obama. Does that have legs?
Yeah, I spoke to Roger Stone about that, actually. He believes 100% it's going to be Michelle Obama. And a lot of people think that it's more probable than the odds makers do. In the end, I think that, she's got 2 lovely daughters who are in college or just finishing. Her family went through a lot of public scrutiny. I don't know if she personally would want to take on that kind of scrutiny. But it wouldn't do poorly if you polled it. Keep in mind, Americans aren't voting based on substance oftentimes. They're voting based on what happens in the last 2 to 3 weeks. So the election's still 50-50. If you put Michelle Obama in there, you might win.
And that's a serious threat to Donald Trump, do you think? A substantial candidate?
Not a substantial candidate, but in the world of, celebrity candidates, you would basically have Barack Obama campaigning the whole time with his wife. It's a bit far-fetched, but if I've seen stranger things happen. It's not outside of the realm of possibility. I do think Donald Trump would defeat her, though.
Erol, let me put this to you. About 250 years ago, the Americans rose up in rebellion and got rid of, shall we say, royal family and government by descendants. And you're kind of wedded to it, though, aren't you? You've got the history of the Kennedys always trying to seek election. You had JFK, obviously, then you had Robert, who was tragically killed, and then you had Ted Kennedy. Now you've got RFK Jr., you've got Bill Clinton, then you've got Hillary Clinton. You're now going for the Obamas. You're kind of wedded. Why don't you just adopt full-blown heirs apparent and do away with democracy, guys?
You're not wrong, and you left out our greatest dynasty, the Bush dynasty.
Oh, it's true, actually. I did. You're absolutely right. I did.
The logic is there. The nation is founded on, we don't bend to kings, this and that, and we've basically created dynastic pseudo royalty inside the United States. That's why Donald Trump was such a breath of fresh air. Granted, he's manor-born billionaire, but he came from the outsider class. He broke into this Democrat-Republican oligarchy. Many people in the Republican Party today would say there's very little difference between George Bush, Hillary Clinton, and Barack Obama. And so you finally have a third-party candidate, somebody who's breaking that mold. And of all people in the world, it ended up being a man with golden hair and a golden tower. But it is what it is, and I think the American people maybe are going to, see that as a change. I will say this: I don't support different members of the Trump family, taking this on and creating a Trump dynasty. I think that would be a huge mistake for our side as well.
Hey, listen, good to talk to you, Erol. That's really good to hear from you. And I suspect the Americans are not likely to adopt a monarchy in the near future. We'll be talking to you more, I'm sure. Erol Morkoc, American political strategist and spokesman for Republicans Overseas UK. Let's go to